Welcome to the Reinvention Code. I'm your host, Dorinda Walker. Reinvention isn't random, it has a code. On this podcast, we'll explore what it really takes to navigate life's transitions with introspection, faith, and strategy. If you're evolving, rebuilding, or stepping into a new season, you're not just starting over, you're leveling up. Let's decode your next chapter together. Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to the Reinvention Code. Today's episode is a little different. So I'm in my bed scrolling through my social media, and because my social media manager has been getting on me about doing a live. She said I have to pick a day and time and be consistent. But here's the issue. Right now, where I am in my career, it doesn't give me the flexibility at this particular moment to be consistent on a regular day at a regular time. So here I am in my bed scrolling through some of the comments and questions. And I thought, why not answer some of the questions and comments and address it right here? So that's what this episode is going to be about. And if you want me to go live, drop a note in the comments and I'll see if I can figure out how to make it work. But the questions that you've been asking in the comments are centered around fear, faith, grief, love, dating, and what it means to build a life that feels right for the person I am now, not the person I used to be or the person that people expect me to be. Some of my answers may make you laugh, some might surprise you, and some get deeply personal. But you know I'm not afraid of sharing my vulnerability. So that's what the Reinvention Code is all about. You know, we don't stay on the surface. We tell the truth about what it takes to release what no longer serves us, to rebuild after life changes us, and to find the courage to choose ourselves again and again. So today is just me, your questions, and some unfiltered answers. So let's get to it. So question one is, how do you transition from one career leap to another without fear? The honest answer is you don't. You don't wait until the fear disappears. You make the leap with the fear. You simply reach a point where betraying yourself feels more dangerous than leaving what is familiar. At least for me, that was my experience. The biggest career leap I ever made was leaving corporate America after 20 years and stepping into entrepreneurship without a real plan. I wish I could tell you I had everything mapped out, that I had a long list of clients and a perfect business plan or strategy, and I had saved enough money to make the transition feel comfortable. I didn't. What I did have was the realization that I had spent way too long trying to force open a door that God was clearly trying to close. For years, I had experienced the microaggressions and the macroaggressions in the workplace, and it had become emotionally draining. It was emotionally abusive, and I was tired of constantly defending my value when I had already proven it over and over and over again. So the signs had been there for a while. I should have left when they dismantled my department and put me in a new role. They took away my staff and budget and gave it to a director and said, congratulations, you have this exciting new role and new title, as if they didn't take away all my power as an executive. It was really exhausting and it was insulting. You know, what kind of opportunity is it when you have no people, no resources, and no real authority to accomplish anything? That's when I should have left, but I didn't. They gave me a new title, but they stripped away my power. And then they tried to convince me that I should be grateful for it, right? It was gaslighting at its finest. But I stayed because sometimes we become so accustomed to proving our value that we don't recognize when the environment has already shown us it no longer values us. And the final straw came when I was sitting in my manager's office one day, and she told me that the next time I was recommended for an award or for some recognition, I needed to refer the opportunity to someone else. She said I was getting too much attention and that leadership didn't like it. Imagine being told that your excellence is a problem. And I know a lot of y'all can relate to that. I spent years fighting for a seat at the table, and now I was being told to make myself smaller because my work was attracting too much recognition. Like, what kind of BS is that? Then they tried to pit me against one of my friends and colleagues, another Black woman, and that really pissed me off. I thought it was grimy, and I refused to participate. I wasn't going to allow anyone to use me or use my friends to turn two successful Black women against each other. Thank God, like, she knew what the deal was, so we had a plan for it. But we know there's room for both of us to grow and to thrive and to succeed. So it was just BS. And I wasn't going to let anyone convince us that only one of us could win. And so it was a whole bunch of stuff, but I knew I was done. And I kept trying to hold the door open when God said, girl, You need to go. You need to close this door and walk through the other one. I wasn't afraid of working hard. I was tired of working hard inside a system that seemed committed to diminishing me. And that was my breaking point. So yes, I was afraid to leave. My biggest fear was losing my financial security. I was walking away from a steady paycheck, benefits, a title, and the identity I had worked hard to build for more than 2 decades. So there was grief attached to that, right? I wasn't just leaving a company. I was leaving a version of myself. I was leaving the career I had worked so hard to build, the title that had become part of how people saw me, and the certainty of knowing that a paycheck was coming every 2 weeks, right? That's scary as hell. But mixed in with that grief was an incredible sense of freedom. For the first time in years, I didn't have to wake up wondering what battle I would have to fight when I walked into the office. I didn't have to keep justifying why I deserved to be in a role when my results had already proven it. I finally had to trust that God had not brought me that far to let me fail, right? That didn't mean I believed everything was going to be easy or great. It meant I trusted that even if I struggled, I would survive. I knew I might have to hustle, right? But that wasn't new to me. I knew I might have to take on work that wasn't part of my original vision, but I also knew myself well enough to know that I would do whatever I needed to do to take care of myself and my family. So that was it. Couldn't give up, right? When I left corporate, I started my own marketing consultancy, but not long after that, my husband became sick and I had to step into a role I never could have planned for. Became his caregiver, and that experience changed how I understood the timing of my corporate departure. I thought I was leaving corporate America to become an entrepreneur. I didn't realize that God was also clearing my calendar so I could become my husband's caretaker. Had I remained in corporate America, the amount of travel required for my job would have created an incredible amount of stress, right, on me and my husband, my family. But more importantly, it would have caused me to miss moments when my husband needed me the most. And because I had made the leap, I now had the flexibility to be there. I was able to care for him and spend quality time with him during his final days, and I don't regret it. Not for 1 minute. God knew what he was doing even when I didn't understand. Sometimes the door God closes isn't only removing you from something that is hurting you. Sometimes he is making a room for an assignment you couldn't even see yet. And entrepreneurship was the next destination for me because I had reached a point where I was no longer willing to work in environments where people consistently questioned my value or whether I deserved to be there. Like, I was over it. I was no longer willing to tolerate bias, BS as the price for my success. I needed the freedom to decide who I worked with, what I worked on, and when it was time to walk away, right? I needed to stop asking systems for permission to use gifts that I had already proven I possessed because I was already God qualified. And that is what faith looked like for me. Faith didn't mean there would be no struggle, right? Faith didn't mean that every decision would immediately make sense or that every business move would succeed. Faith meant that if I kept working, kept learning, and kept trusting God, he would use every experience to prepare me for what was coming. Sometimes you're going to fail. Sometimes you're going to struggle. Sometimes the blessing will take longer than you expected, because you still need the lessons that will prepare you to sustain it. Faith means you keep going anyway. So how do you transition from one career leap to another without fear? You don't. You just do it anyway. You acknowledge the fear. You prepare where you can. You trust what God has already shown you about yourself, and then you take the leap. Because sometimes staying in a place that is diminishing you is far more dangerous than stepping into the unknown. And here's the code for that. When an environment repeatedly asks you to shrink, surrender your power, or defend a value you have already proven, pay attention. The closed door may not be rejection, right? It may be God's redirection. You may think you are simply leaving one career for another, but God may be making room for an assignment you could not see yet. You don't need to know every step. You just need enough faith to take the next one. So let's move on to question 2. How do you keep going after the loss of a spouse? I don't know if keep going is something you decide to do. For me, it was a decision I had to make over and over again. In the first days and weeks after my husband died, I think I was in denial. I put all my energy into planning his funeral and figuring out what I needed to do next. There were arrangements to make, people to contact, decisions to handle, and I wanted to protect my children as best I could. So I stayed busy because staying busy gave me something to focus on other than the fact that my husband was gone and he wasn't coming back. I'd been with Thomas for more than half my life. So when he died, it literally felt like half my heart was gone. I lost my best friend, my lover, my most trusted confidant, the person I laughed with, dreamed with, raised children with, built a life with. I can't even fully explain what that feels like because the pain is unbearable. And I didn't only lose my husband, I lost the identity I had carried for 33 years, right? Not having the title of wife was about so much more than a title. Being Thomas's wife was part of how I understood myself. So I had to confront a question I had never imagined having to ask myself. Well, who am I without my other half? So I had to learn who Dorinda was outside of the marriage. I had to learn to love this new version of myself while grieving the woman I had been with him. And at the same time, I wanted to remain grateful to God for my 33 years, right? Because that was a blessing. I also felt pressure to be strong. And I think women, right, particularly Black women, are often conditioned to become the safe place for everybody else. My children were devastated by the loss of their father, and I wanted to be the safe place for them. But the truth is, I had lost a person who had been my safe place, and there was no one creating that space for me. So I had to find my safe place in the space between me and God. And that became the place where I didn't have to be strong. I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't have to confront anyone else or pretend that I was okay. I could simply be broken, and I was. I probably still am. After the funeral, I gave myself another plan. I decided to sell our home because I didn't want the financial burden of maintaining it by myself. And that house was definitely my husband's house. I remember when we bought it, it looked like something straight out the 70s. I didn't want it, but he loved it. And over time, we redecorated, we remodeled, and we made it our home. And we raised our children there. And his presence was so deeply ingrained in that house that I think I needed to move in order to move forward, if that makes sense. But I didn't leave with bitterness. I prayed that God would send a loving family with children who could create the same kind of memories there that Thomas and I had created with our family. And I'm happy to say that a loving family did purchase our home. And I don't know if everyone understood my decision to sell it. And honestly, I didn't care. It was the right decision for me financially. I was able to use the equity from that house to pay cash for my new house. I moved 2 hours away from much of my immediate family and friend group, but I don't regret that decision. I love my new home. I love what I've been able to create in it. It's mine, but I also see it as one final gift Thomas gave me. The life we built together created the security that now allows me to live without the stress of a mortgage. So I don't look at this home and see evidence that I left him behind. I see evidence that his love is still taking care of me because I was so focused on selling the house, moving and building a new life. I wasn't truly sitting with my grief. It wasn't until more than a year later when I was settled in my new house that there was nothing left to plan, sell, pack, or fix, that the full weight of that loss finally caught up with me. When my father died, I was angry with God, right? But when Thomas died, I felt a sense of gratitude. I was grateful that he didn't suffer. I was grateful that God allowed me to experience 33 years of a beautiful marriage because some people will never experience that kind of love in an entire lifetime. So I'm grateful. And that gratitude, it didn't erase my pain, but it gave the pain context, right? Because Thomas's death also triggered abandonment wounds that I thought I had already healed from my childhood. And his death made me feel as though I was all alone again. I had to finally recognize that I wasn't only grieving my husband, I was also confronting old emotional scars that his death had reopened. And I also knew that rushing into another relationship wasn't the answer, right? Because another person could not replace my husband, could not heal the wound for me. I couldn't make someone else responsible for convincing me that I was safe or loved or worthy of happiness, right? I had to learn how to be alone without feeling abandoned. I had to become comfortable in my solitude, but there's a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is missing the hugs, it's missing the kiss on my collarbone, it's missing the laughter and the intimacy of being known by someone who shared more than half my life. Solitude is being comfortable with yourself. But I've also learned that there can be a danger in solitude, right? Because you can become so comfortable being alone that you begin to isolate yourself. And I realized I was saying no to invitations and experiences because being home had become easier. I had become so comfortable in my solitude that I wasn't fully experiencing the joy of life. So now when I recognize that I'm enjoying my solitude a little too much, I find something I genuinely want to do. I get invited to a lot of events and I feel blessed because I have access to rooms and experiences that many people never have. But I've also attended so many events that simply being in the room doesn't bring me joy anymore. At this point in my life, I don't feel the need to be in every room unless I'm working or speaking. So instead, I would rather try a new restaurant, take a vacation, go painting, or do something that I actually enjoy. And I'm no longer living according to what other people think I should be doing. The part of keep going isn't only returning to life, right? It's creating a life that genuinely belongs to you, doing what you love. So it's helped me through this process. I love the ocean. I love the beach. I try to travel and spend time near water because that is where I feel closest to God. I love the work I do. I love taking an idea from paper and bringing it to life on television or through digital media. And I love this podcast because it gives me a vehicle to be vulnerable, share my experiences, and hopefully help someone who needs comfort or an answer they have been searching for, right? So when I share what I've survived, the pain is no longer only pain. It has the opportunity to become purpose. So I've never felt guilty about the new things I have or the experiences I'm enjoying because my husband loved me so much that he wanted me to be happy. Before he died, Thomas told me that he wanted me to find love again because he didn't want me to be alone. That is how deeply that man loved me. So I know I'm not betraying him by living. I know that everything I'm experiencing, he is still experiencing with me in some way. He is simply not here physically. I believe he is here in my home, cheering me on. He always told me how proud he was of me, and I don't believe that changed when he died. I know he's still proud of me. He always will be with me in my heart and in my spirit. So for a widow, I'll say wanting to live again is a continuous process because grief has hills and valleys, right? There will always be days when you feel strong, hopeful, and excited about what's ahead. Then there will be days when something small sends you right back into the depth of what you lost. Healing doesn't mean you never return to the valley, right? The key is not allowing yourself to become so buried in the valley that you miss the joy of life when it appears. God wakes me up every morning because I still have purpose. It was Thomas's time to go, but it was not mine. And I can't drown myself in grief and call that love. Honoring my husband means living the life he would want me to live. I also want my children to see that. I've always wanted them to become independent enough to be comfortable with their own decisions. I wanted them to understand the importance of hard work, of service, and giving back. But I also want them to understand the importance of finding joy. I don't want them to believe that losing someone they love means their own life must end emotionally. So what does keep going mean to me now? It means doing whatever I want to do as long as I'm not hurting anyone else. I'm at a point in my life where I do not have to justify my decisions or make excuses for them. I make them because they're right for me, and I don't care what anyone else thinks about it. And that freedom's not selfish. It's the result of understanding that my happiness and my fulfillment are my responsibility. No one else can build a joyful life for me, right? No one else can heal my abandonment wounds. No one else can decide when it's time for me to travel, to dance, to rest, to love, to laugh, or to try something new. I have to choose life for myself. So to the person who has recently lost a spouse, I would say this: it's okay to feel exactly how you feel. You don't have to rush your grief. You don't have to be strong every day. You don't have to be productive, inspirational, or ready to search for joy. I'm going to tell you, the road is not easy, but I would encourage you not to allow yourself to become so burdened by the grief that you stop honoring the person you lost. The person who loves you would never want you to wallow in grief and stop living your life. They would want you to keep going. They would want you to find happiness again, even if you can't imagine that happiness right now. And here's the code for that question. Grief may not explain why you retreat, but it can't become the place where you permanently live. Solitude can help you rediscover yourself, but eventually you have to open the door and let life back in. Moving forward doesn't mean leaving your spouse behind. It means allowing the love, the lessons, and the life you built together to become the foundation for the life you must now build for yourself. You honor the person you lost by living, right? Not by forgetting them, not by pretending that the pain is gone, but by carrying their love with you as you continue becoming the person God has left you here to be. So here's the next question. You said you're open to love again. How has your dating life been? And do you think you'll remarry? So I'm going to be honest, my dating life is non-existent. I tried dating apps and they're not for me. I also want to be clear that I'm not looking to get remarried. I'm not saying that I'd never consider it, but it's really not a requirement for me at this stage in my life. It just really isn't. I don't need to be married again, and marriage is not the goal behind my openness to another relationship. I had a beautiful marriage with Thomas. I experienced that kind of partnership for 33 years, and I don't feel the need to recreate it or prove anything by becoming someone's wife again. What I miss is the companionship of a man. I miss having someone to laugh with, to travel with, and to enjoy dinner with, to share intimacy with, and experience life with. You know, I would welcome that kind of connection again. But I understand it may look different from the life I shared with Thomas, and that's okay. And honestly, I've become comfortable living alone. I enjoy having my own home, my own space, and the freedom to make decisions about my life without consulting anyone else, right? I'm not necessarily looking to combine households and merge every part of my life with someone or follow the traditional path towards marriage. I don't think I need that. And let me be clear, the structure may be flexible, but my standard is not. Monogamy is a requirement. I might not need the title of wife again, but I'm not interested in sharing a man. I don't want a casual arrangement, an open relationship, or a situationship where we avoid commitment while enjoying the benefits of intimacy. Like, that's not what I want. If I allow someone in my life, there must be honesty, exclusivity, emotional maturity, and good intention. So yes, I'm open to love, but I'm open to a relationship designed for the woman I am now, not one based on what other people think a relationship is supposed to look like for me. And if God has that kind of companionship in his plan for me, I believe the right man will show up with clarity and intention. And if he doesn't, I'll still have a full and joyful life. I don't need a man to complete me, but I would enjoy sharing this chapter of my life with the right someone, right? The structure may be flexible. Marriage is optional, but monogamy is not. And as I reflect on these questions, I realize they all come back to one truth. At some point, you have to stop waiting for someone else to give you permission to live the life that is calling you. I had to give myself permission to leave a career that was diminishing me, even though I was afraid. I had to give myself permission to keep living after losing Thomas, even though part of me wanted to retreat from the world. And I had to give myself permission to define love and companionship in a way that honors the woman I am now, without lowering my standards or sacrificing my peace. That is what reinvention requires. It requires you to release the life that no longer fits without knowing exactly what will replace it. It requires you to trust that losing a title, a relationship, a home, or a version of yourself does not mean you've lost your value. And it requires you to understand that joy will not always come looking for you. Sometimes you have to open the door. Sometimes you have to leave a house. Sometimes you have to take a trip, try something new, set the boundary, right? Walk away, or simply decide that the life you still have deserves to be lived. So here's the final code for this episode. God may give you another day, but only you can decide to truly live it. No one else can choose your peace, protect your purpose, or create your joy for you. That responsibility belongs to you. Choosing joy does not mean that life has never broken you. It simply means that you refuse to let what broke you have the final word. You can carry the grief and still welcome the joy. You can honor what was and still make room for what is next. You can protect your peace without closing your heart. And you can love the person you used to be while giving yourself permission to become someone new. Your life may not look the way you imagined it would, but it's still your life. And as long as God continues to wake you up, there is still purpose to fulfill, right? Joy to experience, and more of your story to be written. The next chapter won't choose itself. You have to choose it. And more importantly, you have to choose yourself. That's the code. So until next time, keep evolving, keep choosing joy, and keep becoming who God has called you to be. As always, I wish you much peace and much joy. And I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Reinvention Code. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who's stepping into their next season. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. Remember, reinvention isn't random. It has a code. I'll see you next time.